Hello everyone. This was a good week of chapters, with all of the chapters being out and the end of Super Smartphone, much to my surprise, but it is over. So we'll be starting off with One Piece, chapter 1063, and this was a great chapter, mainly because of the end. The beginning of the chapter is seeing more of Luffy's group continuing to hang out in the futuristic city that Atlas sort of runs, as they more or less run off to continue to be violent to their holograms. Luffy and Co. end up accidentally stealing the food they ate in front of Atlas, no less, and the clothing, as they gain some more clothing. Most of it futuristic, except for Jinbei, who wanted to have a tropical shirt, which I thought was very funny. Then we see that Egghead seemingly has a police force of pacifistas, which is just Kuma. So Luffy is about to fight the pacifista when Bonnie gets in the way and hits Luffy. It is then revealed to the others of the crew, and I guess confirmed to us, that Kuma is her dad, and she doesn't want to see the pacifista hurt. So she is upset by it and so on, as Luffy more or less gets aggravated that she's trying to defend the pacifista, saying it's just a pacifista, and tries to save her. I'm assuming he did, and they're probably separated from Chopper and Jinbei, if I had to guess. And so the majority of the chapter will see these two trying to make their way to Vegapunk, as now Luffy wants to help Bonnie, type of thing. It'll be something like that, I imagine. So now we'll have three different groups to a degree. But the pacifista blast seemingly was a lot bigger, as it slammed into the coastline and seemingly destroyed it. I don't know why it was so powerful, but it was. That was the last of what we see with the Straw Hats of this chapter, as it then cuts to a random ocean, as we see Law is fighting the original Blackbeard crew from Doc Q, Van Augur, Jesus Burgess, and Blackbeard himself, as apparently he was lying in wait on the one island, the eastern island, to get who wanted to get to the furthest point. And so now we're getting Law versus Blackbeard for the poneglyphs. The problem is Blackbeard's 100% going to win, as he has absolutely decked out his crew with the most absurd devil fruit powers ever. From Jesus Burgess now having super strength, the strength fruit. Van Augur has teleportation. Doc Q can now make diseases of any type and infect everyone. The crew is insane, and so it's going to be an absolute massacre that people are going to be pissed off, but we're probably not going to see it. I would be surprised if we did, though. I think it would be an absolute mauling by Blackbeard, so maybe he will show it, just to show the absolute might that is Blackbeard, but I don't imagine we will, which I don't think it's a problem, because the story isn't necessarily from the point of view of the whole world, it's from just Luffy, and so we'll get snippets of other things, but the story is Luffy's point of view, and the Straw Hat crew at large, so getting some of this stuff to add some tension is nice, but we're not going to really see it. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. It was pretty great. The ending in particular really saved it, showing this epic clash of near Yonko level, as now Law is going to have to try his damnedest to fight tooth and nail, as we don't know if anyone else on his crew is even remotely close to the commanders of the Blackbeard pirates. Though if we were to see this fight full on, I imagine we would get some level of power upgrade for the rest of the crew. So it'll be interesting if we get to see this battle. I don't think so. I think we'll jump back to the Straw Hats and see more of what Vegapunk's issue is, and or what Bonnie and Luffy are going to do now. As for that part, that's still very interesting, as I think this arc has a lot of interesting setup that it's still doing, and I don't really know where it's going, which is an exciting piece for this story at this point in its run. The fact that there's a story arc that I don't know what's going on, quote unquote, that it's not really easy to predict, oh, this is the outcome. Maybe more insightful One Piece analysts know where it's going, but I certainly don't. So I look forward to seeing what the next few chapters will bring, and I don't think there's a break, but you never know. So it'll be interesting to see what the next few chapters hold, as things are seemingly ramping up. So now we're on to Black Clover, chapter 341, and this was a good chapter, showing off more of the powerful samurai ninja magic users in the Land of the Sun here, with the Shogun explaining who they are a little bit, as Asta continues his training against these more powerful Zetan users as he continues to lose, but he's understanding it a little bit better, allowing him to grow. We then see that he talks to Yami's little sister, and they get seemingly a little closer as she continues to hype up the Shogun, telling that the Shogun is very powerful and is the reason that their country is currently prospering, but he still has a lot to do to try to really unite the land. Asta tries to bond with her to a degree as she explains the Shogun is her benefactor, and so Asta tries to bond by saying that Yami is sort of his benefactor, and the sister ends up dropping the bombshell that Yami may not be as good as we think he is, as according to her, he killed their entire village, and it looks like we're going to be getting that flashback. I think that's pretty interesting if it's true. Now, it probably won't be true. There'll be some sort of difference. If I had to guess, the elder probably was possessed by some demon wanting Yami, but the elder didn't want to give up Yami, so Yami had to kill the elder, which then caused some sort of ripple effect, and he killed everyone. Then he left of his own volition. That's probably what happened, if I had to guess, as well as the fact that she's remembering it wrong. Asta will either fight her on that, or simply say that's not who he is now, and try to convince her of him changing then. And we'll probably have their meeting later, where we see Yami's side, where, like I had said prior, a demon or something possessed the people of the village except for her, and Yami had to do it to protect her or something. It's going to be something like that. No less interesting, especially if they decide to really flip this trope and have it that Yami did just outright kill everyone for no reason. That would be very interesting, to place a dark cloud over Yami, but we don't know right now. So it'll be interesting what this flashback reveals about Yami and about the sister, and how Asta reacts to this news. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was pretty good, seeing the continued training of Asta, as well as dropping the bombshell of the potential evil past of Yami before his arrival at the Clover Kingdom. So the next few chapters should be pretty good, though I think this one's on break as well, though I'm not certain. The way the app was working was a little weird, so we'll see what's there and what's not. But the next few chapters should be pretty interesting, seeing this backstory and how is Asta going to take this news, as well as the fact of how true is it and what is right and what is wrong. So now we're on to Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 150. It seems as though last week I got the chapter wrong. Last week was 149, not 150. That's my bad. I quickly looked at it. I was wrong. So sorry for that. Now we're on chapter 150, and this was a good chapter as the battle with Shinzo seemingly comes to a climax and end as the two sides battle to and fro, having it that Kengo really carried the two of them, as Teo was able to tank a couple of the hits, though not all of them, before Kengo was able to push the two of them out into the ocean and use his awakened power, which is some sort of cognition where he can kind of read people's minds, and if he touches them physically, he can look at their memories or share memories with them. And so that's Kengo's plan. He plans to go and look at Shinzo's memories, and if they are fake memories, he plans on fixing them. So that should be pretty interesting if it works, or if somehow the brainwashing somehow corrupts Kengo, leading it that the only way to save the siblings is to get rid of Momo. That would be interesting, as that would be the only way that Kengo probably gets corrupted at this point, is when he does this, he somehow does get corrupted. Though I don't know how Shinzo is going to get corrupted unless Momo somehow gets up to the helicopter they're on. Because I don't think the little brother is going to get corrupted here. We haven't gotten his connection to the gold rank spy, but we'll see where that goes from here. The battle itself was pretty good as they continue to trade blows up until he falls into the ocean. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the fight continue and ultimately end, while Futaba and the eldest and youngest brother continue in the main dining hall, whichever you want to call it, on the boat, where Shinzo and Kengo are now in the middle of the ocean, probably needing to be rescued by the main female character and Shion. We'll see what happens next week, as the next chapter should be interesting to see what direction this goes in. As I had said, either Kengo fixes Shinzo, meaning he's kind of the answer, or he gets corrupted himself, showing that this is almost an impossible task to get the brainwashing away. But we'll need to see. So now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 131, and this was a great chapter as we get to see the final stand of the Union and Under fighting against the sun. As after Juiz is dead because rebellion sucked the life out of her, she was able to stall for 5 minutes. I thought it was only 3 last week. And Luna seems extremely excited by this, the fact that she was able to stop him for 5 minutes, but it was not enough. She seemingly is more curious about it. Fuko tells her that she's misunderstanding negators and people as a whole, thinking that's not the best they can do. We then see Victor seemingly get possessed by the sword rebellion, and he seemingly jumps up in power because of his hatred and rage, and is able to shoot a beam of probably blood at the sun, which knocks him over, or at least knocks him up in the air a little bit as it stops him and stalls him for a minute. We then see a lot of the others try to make a mad rush to the end, as we see Phil fall, Undecrease, and the daughter of the scientist, the head scientist, I can't think of their name right now, Unforgettable, I think it was. We then see that Unbreakable and Top are done as well. Seal has finished them off. We then see that the battle with Unruin is not going well, as Titania has to use as much effort as she can to stop the sun from reaching Fuko. Billy gets stabbed in the eyes as he's trying to use as much strength as he can. Chikara's trying to push. Everyone is pushing as much as they can to the brink of death. As many of them are done, and they're at death's door, and they will not survive. None of them will anyway, but many are already falling, as Shin uses his unbreakable staff to try to push the sun as well and stall as much as they can, and it comes down to the wire as the entire building collapses as Fuko is sitting at the round table, and just as things are looking the worst, everyone is able to stall and save Fuko right at the last second, and she goes into the future. Now I wonder if we're going to see the final moments of this current loop before it ends, as Fuko disappears with the arc and Luna more or less talks to Victor and Andy, or if we cut to Fuko in the future and do not know how that battle ends. It'll be interesting, but this chapter itself was excellent. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. It was great seeing this final stand and just seeing everyone trying and struggling to the bitter end, showing just how desperate this fight is, showing just how overwhelming this final fight will be for Fuko, as there's a lot she's gonna have to do if she has any hope of victory, because they weren't even close in this one, and I think this was Juiz's strongest unit, at least according to Luna. I don't even know what they could do to save everyone and win this fight. Fuko's really going to need to power up, and I'm very curious to see how they do it. This next arc, this next saga should be extremely entertaining. I look forward to the next part of this series, as I think there's still a healthy amount left to go. This will be the final arc, quote unquote, but this will be a long saga going forward, so it should be pretty good, as this chapter itself was just excellent. The final stand of Juiz's Union. Now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 128, and this was a good chapter as we get to see the continued dominance of Doom, as well as the arrival of Finn and Rain. As they arrive and save Dot from certain death, they try to battle tooth and nail against Doom, but they find out they are horribly outmatched. There is nothing they can do, as Doom is too powerful. They're also still exhausted from their previous fight, so I could only imagine that none of them are going to do much here, as they'll probably have to continue to gang up on Doom and eventually fight him all on one, where Doom will probably win, only for Mash to come in and save the day. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, but the battle so far was was interesting as Rain and Finn were able to do some decent damage, but nothing super significant, as Doom even states that he's only going to use 50% of his power instead of the full 100 because they're not quite worthy of that, but they're stronger than he had expected, so he plans to give them that level of respect. So it'll be interesting to see if another Divine Visionary shows up to help these two, or if they're going to fall before another person arrives. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing this battle begin, as well as seeing that Rain and Finn continue to work as a well-oiled machine despite their exhaustion. So it'll be interesting to see how far they can go together before ultimately meeting their end. I imagine that Order will arrive soon and probably take the biggest fight to him to that point, but not be enough, and then maybe the leader of the Divine Visionaries arrives at the last possible moment to save everyone, only to lose in the end before Mash arrives to save the day. So it'll be interesting to see how these battles work out and how close they come, and as well as how powerful Doom truly is as he continues to escalate in power. So now we're on to Sakamoto Days chapter 91, and this was a good chapter showing the final end of the school teacher, as well as the confirmation that Akira's aunt is in fact dead, as Sakamoto had known about it. The director was saddened that he wasn't able to get the last footage of her life, as it would have helped with whatever story he wants to do. Akira jumps in and tries to attack him, but is outmatched, only for the director to realize that perhaps a mortal wound would add character to Akira, but she is saved by Sakamoto. The rest of the chapter is just the director and Sakamoto fighting, going back and forth. The director, without having a camera in his hand, is relatively weak, and Sakamoto very much gains the upper hand, but once he gets a camera, be it that it's a phone, as Sakamoto had destroyed his camera, he then starts really taking it to Sakamoto, showing just how powerful he is, despite his weird antics and tendencies. So the director is able to get the upper hand for a while, until Sakamoto ends up slimming down. I don't know if it was still locked or if he met some sort of requirement of damage or something, but he slimmed down to his quote-unquote prime form. I imagine, outside of the gag of what it is, he might end up starting to shift back to that form, given how ridiculous things have been, but it's hard to tell. It is Sakamoto. They might keep him fat and out of shape, and every so often shifting him to his prime. But for now, we have the prime Sakamoto versus the director to see who wins. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, as the director says he has some high quality makeup, so it'll be interesting to see if he ends up realizing that Sakamoto's just as powerful as he once was and is overwhelmed, or if the director shows that he has a lot more skill than really what he's shown, and Sakamoto continues to struggle. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it'll be interesting to see what outcome is made. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the fighting escalate to this point as they battle to and fro in a library. Seeing the end of the teacher was not shocking given last week, but she did only have that last minute wound, which did not slow down the director all that much. So the battle should continue next chapter, and it should be pretty interesting to see how prime Sakamoto handles the director, if he is that powerful or not. And lastly, the final chapter of Super Smartphone, chapter 23. This was a good chapter and a relatively okay end to the manga, though I still think this story had a lot of life left, and even how it ended had a lot of life left. And it seems as though it's getting some sort of novel, so I imagine it'll clean its story up there, perhaps, and I just couldn't finish here, but there's too much story left. So the chapter was the main character and the main villain are face to face on a bridge. The main character plans on revealing the smartphone when the mastermind, who is behind the two friends of the main character, sort of hints that there might be more to the smartphone to the two of them. The girl ends up realizing realizing what it is, and he shouts out to the main character before he relinquishes his smartphone that the smartphone is not a machine. It's more than that. And that's when he puts the pieces together that the super smartphone that each one of these people have gotten is actually the person they lost, whether physically or their mind or a clone of it, whatever it is who they're looking for. So the main character asks this to his smartphone, and the smartphone basically says maybe. That's when the villain figures it out, as well as each one takes the personality of the person or people that the super smartphone user lost. Like the main character's super smartphone continuously asked him questions like his little brother did. So that was an interesting plot twist, that the people they were all looking for are in the super phones. So we'll see how, well, we will not see unless one reads the novel. It's implied that they now have to figure out a way to kind of rescue them, save them, figure out what happened to them through whatever it is, as it seems as though both the main villain and the main hero break sides. They basically leave and now need to figure out the next game plan, as the main hero plans on winning this battle against the main villain, and the main villain plans to do the same, as the mastermind is very much entertained by this whole thing and looks forward to seeing who wins, seemingly. So we get a glimpse of all of the other smartphone users that we hadn't actually been introduced yet, but we see all of them and potentially whose side is on who, and a little sort of snippet you can see of who is who and what is what. So it'll be interesting if the novel explains any of this, what is the novel, whatever it is. But the story itself ends here for the manga readers, and I think it was fine. I think it was good. The chapter itself, I think I would give a B. It was a good chapter, a fine end to the series, though it's not quite the true end. The series as a whole is hard to do because it is such an unfinished story that I don't know how to feel about it. I'd probably give it a C+ for the series as a whole, as there were a lot of good ideas and some fairly decent execution on some of them, as some of the story was really starting to ramp up, as the main character was gaining allies, using his smarts to outmaneuver and really start playing this game relatively well. The main villain continued to be relatively captivating as they would continue to go back and forth. I thought there was some decent life to this story left, but as I've said several times before, I'm very wrong on these, and just like with I Tell C, which I thought had an absolute incredible amount of potential and life left, similar to this one, though not as high as I Tell C, and it ended up being cut short. Now, just like I Tell C, it kind of ended in a way that it could be continued if they wanted to, though they won't, they never have, and they never will. But leaving it open like that is relatively nice, and I think it actually helps the story in a manner of speaking. So I think it was a good story, a good manga. I enjoyed what I read, and I look forward to seeing if there is more, if the mangaka gets another shot, because I thought the art was relatively clean. So it'll be interesting, but overall I thought this was a good manga series. So that was all of the chapters. It was a good week overall. Lots of battles, a lot of interesting events, a lot of big moments and turning points in some of the series, and a final chapter in one of them. So a good week overall. So now we're on to everything else, and Jujutsu Kaisen was fine. It seems as though that's on break, I think. Blue Box was fine, and Aliens Area was fine. I think that one's starting to wane, for me at least, and I don't know how much life left it has. But we'll see. Perhaps this one surprises me and lasts for quite a while. But this chapter was fine. Elusive Samurai was good, as we got to see the battle really turn, as another of the enemy generals falls, and the main enemy general in this arc ends up losing his duel to the bodyguard of the main character. Now, the main enemy general here ended up figuring out that one of his generals, the woman, was using sneak attacks and not being honorable, and was distracted by it, but ultimately the bodyguard told him to knock it off and won their duel. So it'll be interesting to see how they escape this death trap, as now the enemy general is gone. I wonder if they rally or if the enemy retreats here. It'll be interesting. The next few chapters should be fun in that regard, as the first of many battles has been won by the main character. P times 6 was good, as we see that the tutor character was not able to win his battle with the genius lucky sibling and loses outright. Full on defeat. No votes for him because he could not perfect his copying. And it seems as though we're getting Lucky's performance next instead of his brother's, so it'd be very interesting to see what direction is taken. I very much look forward to seeing what the next chapter holds and the conflict Lucky has on how he's going to play and what he's going to do. I think it's pretty interesting and I really look forward to it. Finally, there's Ginka and Luna, and this was a fun chapter as we find out that bits of Ginka's body can fuse together and make seemingly smaller versions of Ginka from different points in his life. So the little mini Ginka, as I think they call him Mini Gin, ends up being the 9-year-old version of Ginka. So he's innocent and very serious. It's very funny to see their continued development as well as the continued growth of this little group of theirs. Now we have 2 Ginkas and 3 different mages in this little group of adventurers, as now they plan on going to find the magic guild. So it'll be interesting, especially if this guild is bigger than just a few top level mages and if it's a whole group and so on, and we'll see what the next few chapters and adventures hold for this series. So that was everything. Overall, it was a pretty good week. Lots of different and exciting things happened, and it should be good for the next few weeks. I don't know if anything's on break, what is or isn't. I'm not quite sure, so it'll be exciting to see what's there and what's not for the next week of chapters. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.